May the words of my lips and the meditations of all our hearts be always righteous in your sight. Amen. Today is St. David's Day, and I thought for this evening it might be good to find out a bit more about a man whose life meant so much to many that not only will he become canonised as a saint, but further be named as the patron saint of Wales. He's also the patron saint of vegetarians and poets as well. I think that vegetarians and poets, that's separate, although perhaps you're doubly blessed if you're a vegetarian poet. Myth, rumour, legend and exaggeration, I'm fairly sure, are key parts of the tale of St. David, but I like to think that in any myth there's a nugget of truth. Some of his story may seem fantastic, but it's clear to see that for the people his life touched, a lasting impression has echoed through the ages to this very day. Before I get too far into this evening's talk, however, I'd like to apologise in advance. I'm ashamed to say I'm not a fluent Welsh speaker, and I have no doubt I'm going to mispronounce some Welsh names and places in due course. With that caveat in mind, I'll continue. St. David's earthly story ended over 1400 years ago at his death on the 1st of March, 589 AD, a Tuesday, if you were curious. His last words were as follows: "Brothers, be ye constant. The yoke which with single mind ye have taken, bear ye to the end. And whatsoever ye have seen with me and heard, keep and fulfill." Rolling the clock back a little further, and David started his life in the South Wales town of Cefn, and was a son of an aristocratic family. Now, I should get the English words right. His father was a prince called Sol, son of the king of Cardigan. His mother, Nom, was a daughter of a local chieftain, and rumour has it, possibly the niece of King Arthur, of the Knights of King Arthur fame. There's a bit of drama and scandal around David's conception. David wasn't the child of a love-filled marriage. Rather, he was born after his father either seduced or even raped Nom, who after David's birth went on to become a nun. Nom left her family and gave birth by the sea. It is said that so intense was the birth that her fingers left marks where she grasped the rocks. As David was born, a bolt of lightning from heaven struck the rock and split it in two. As an infant, David was baptized by St. Elvis of Munster, and it is said that the blind man was cured by the water used for his baptism. David was later schooled at a local monastery, Penfurel, which is south of present-day Aberon, and was taught by Paulinus, a blind monk. The gift of sight wasn't only through the waters of his baptism, however. David cured Paulinus of his blindness by making the sign of the cross. Realising that David was a special and holy person, I suspect the whole signing thing gave it away, Paulinus sent him off on a missionary to convert the pagan people of Britain. As an adult, he founded a Celtic monastery at Glenbrusson, on the western headland of Pembrokeshire, at the very same spot where St. David's Cathedral stands on this very day. David was a proponent of the virtues of an ascetic lifestyle, but whilst many ascetics would withdraw from the world for their practice, David rather adopted a frugal lifestyle, a life that renounces material possessions and physical pleasures, with time spent fasting and concentrating on reflected spiritual matters. David was a teacher and spread asceticism amongst Celtic Christians, so much so that his teachings helped found a further 12 monasteries. Upon his death, the monastery he founded at Glenbrusson became an important Christian shrine and pilgrim destination. Indeed, 4 visits to the shrine of St. David's was considered to be the equivalent of 2 to Rome and 1 to Jerusalem. It is, of course, the actions, teachings, and values of an individual that are remembered through the centuries, and in the 12th century, he was formally recognised by the Catholic Church as a national patron saint for Wales. But the brief history outlined above isn't really enough to explain why he should be recognised such. For that, let's expand on those last words again. Brothers, be ye constant. The yoke with which single mind ye have taken, bear ye to the end. And whatsoever ye have seen with me and heard, keep and fulfill. By the 6th century, Christianity had filtered into Britain through a variety of channels. The Roman Empire had fallen, the remnants in the west dying away at the last, being wiped away by invasions coming from the north and the east. It was a time of change, of flux, and a time where new ways of thinking were coming in. The overwhelming conquest of the eastern half of the British Isles by the Angles, the Saxons and the Jutes was bringing Christianity along with the conquest. But Wales, Cornwall, Galloway and various other points to the west saw the old ways continuing. Enter then David, a man of Christian value, born into a land that did not fully understand or embrace a Christian message. A man who was born into a time of change. His faith led him to become first priest, and then abbot, and finally bishop to his community, who helped to spread Christianity among the pagan Celtic tribes of Western Britain. A man who was affectionately known as the water drinker, for he was said to drink nothing else. His ascetic beliefs reportedly led to his refusal to let monks drink alcohol. He's also said to have insisted that the monks pull their ploughs themselves rather than use draft animals. At one of his monasteries, David became so unpopular with his monks for the life of austerity he made them live, they tried to poison him. David was warned about this by St. Scuthon, who travelled from Ireland on the back of a sea monster for the purpose. Again, I think there's a little bit of exaggeration in this. But David blessed the poisoned bread and ate it, and came to no harm. He undertook a number of missionary journeys through Wales and Brittany, and also took the time to complete a number of pilgrimages, including one to Jerusalem. That's no small feat even now, but at a time before EasyJet flights would certainly have been an impressive undertaking. David was a vegetarian. Leeks grew well in Welsh soil, and it's probably why leeks is synonymous with St. David. Myth tells, however, how once, during a battle with Saxon invaders, the Welsh were unable to distinguish between friend and foe on the battlefield. St. David suggested that the Welsh fighters wear a leek on their hats. They did, and they won the battle. Therefore, ever since, the leek has become the traditional symbol of Wales. On St. David's Day, the tradition is to wear a leek on your lapel or on your hat. Perhaps the best known story of David took place at the Synod of Brefi. It was called to condemn the heretical teachings of Pelagius, a man who denied Augustine's doctrine of original sin, and believed rather in a radical free will, that humans could fulfill the law without divine aid. During the Synod, David spoke out so eloquently against this as heresy, with a persona so intense that a miracle occurred. A small hill is said to have lifted him up as it rose beneath him as he spoke. To really reinforce the point he was making, a dove is also said to have settled on his shoulder, a sign of the gift of the Holy Spirit, which gave him such great eloquence. This is why in iconography today, St. David is pictured with a dove on his shoulder, stood upon a hill. Living a life that was devoted to faith in preference to personal pleasure, to defending Christian values and with a desire to help those around him, David's most lasting contribution to the Welsh people and to us is a phrase said to have been part of his last sermon just before his death. He said, "Be joyful and keep your faith and your creed. Do the little things that you have seen me do and heard about." Apologies in advance. Gwrwch i'r pethau bachan wenwad. Or, do the little things in life, is a well-known phrase in Welsh. Not how I said it, but the Welsh do. And it reminds us that even in a time of great transformation, the work of faith is still in the little things. Most clearly in the relationships of those around us. It's in everything. In the daily work we have been given to do, in the small incremental changes that we all can make. Archbishop Rowan Williams, referring back to these words at St. David's last sermon, states that it reminds us that the primary things for us are the relationships around us, the need to work at what's under our hands, what's within our reach. We can transform our domestic, our family relationships, our national life to some extent, if we do that with focus and concentration in the presence of God. So, if we stay focused on doing the little things with God, then God will give the growth. Of course, there are great actions taken by great people, but from the mightiest to the lowliest, each of us can make a difference in God's earthly kingdom. And it can all start with the smallest of